Welcome to your new neighborhood. And with that statement, I don't necessarily mean the convention center or DISTRIBUTECH or in full deference to the great city of Orlando, not even Orlando, but this neighborhood on the screen behind me. Just go with me on a journey for the next few minutes. The neighborhood that you live in is socially engaging. It's economically vibrant. It's just a great place to live with a great quality of life. Now, you've got the dwelling on the screen behind me. You've got PV on the rooftop. You've got an EV that's charging in the garage. You've got a 14 kilowatt hour battery next to that EV for some local storage. A pretty sweet setup, it really is. Oh, and before I forget to mention it, you're also an executive at the local utility. So you're about to kick back into the Chaise Lounge with a cocktail in your hand to just enjoy the afternoon when you realize that being in the utility business isn't always champagne and helicopters. There's more to it. There are risks around us every day. And specifically, the challenges that come along with your position and the quality of life that you enjoy really fit into three categories from my perspective. The first is infrastructure. Infrastructure perhaps is aging. It is certainly changing dramatically with more and more renewables being added in, which is great from a sustainability perspective, but it also comes with challenges where the base load is not always perfectly level. You have the increase in demand. Maybe it's over the last 100 years you've built up your generation fleet, but now you're looking at the next 10 years and you've got to double or triple that level of generation to meet the demand. You also have bad actors that are out there, folks that are trying to take down the grid to make a statement, advanced and persistent cybersecurity threats. And finally, the edge of the grid is changing dramatically. You had 3 distributed energy resources in your home alone, but the amount of DERMs that are out there are increasing dramatically. Gartner says by the end of 2025, there will be 50% more assets that are behind the meter than are in front of it. How do we use all of those things for the benefit of the grid? There's the second category, which has to do with environmental pressures. We've got a lot of things going on here, floods and fires and storms. It doesn't matter where on the world you may be living. You could have extreme heat, you could have extreme drought. All of these things put pressure on providing resilient and reliable services. And finally, the third category that I would highlight is the changing social structure that's out there. Consumers are used to consuming in a way that they have very good insight into what they are doing in real time. If you order something from Uber Eats, you knew in real time when the driver left the restaurant, the driver's name, how much your food cost, where they were, and up to the minute updates on your phone as they were driving up to the outside of your house. That level of service transparency and interaction is not something that most consumers enjoy when it comes to the utility space. That service imbalance is a real opportunity. If we want to move to a point where we have consumers that will trust the use of those distributed energy resources, they got to know when they go to the garage in the morning, the battery isn't flat on that EV because you used it for a grid source. How do we develop that level of trust? I think it starts with engaging with the consumer, which is the real opportunity that's ahead of us. If those are the challenges that are in front of us, and yet we are obligated to provide safe, reliable, and affordable services to the community, how do we tackle these problems? I'll leave that for the moment, but meanwhile, back in the neighborhood, come with me on the journey one more step. It is a hot afternoon. You've got the sun hitting, those PV rooftops generating a fair amount of electricity. You've got EVs charging in the garage. You've got air conditioners humming in the background. All is stable, no outages. But how close to the edge are you? Are you close to having an outage? Where are the hot spots in the grid? You really may not know exactly what's going on without better visibility into the edge. And there are real examples where this causes significant issues. Western Australia today, about 65% of the power on a sunny afternoon comes from residential rooftop solar. Terrific. You can turn down generation, except when the sun goes behind a cloud and you lose a lot of that capability, and suddenly all that load wants to switch back onto the grid. Providing that balance of supply and demand is a tough problem to solve, and we have utilities turning to really unusual techniques like turning on stadium lights or adjusting line voltages to try to make sure that the grid is stable. There's a better way to solve this problem. So back to with the exhibit again. How close to the edge are you? Let's take a little bit of a closer look, and you get to the point where you now have established a very clear case for grid edge intelligence. How do you get visibility out at the edge? How do you understand what the capability is of all of those assets that are out there? How do we move towards being able to control them and finally being able to optimize and fully orchestrate the situation to get the best reliability, the best cost of service, and the overall grid being balanced in a full-time sense? There's enormous opportunities with real-time usage of the data that is available to you. You have expense that you can avoid by using non-wires alternatives. There's lots of things that you can do, and we start to see these activities coming to fruition today. Harry's going to be up on stage here in just a little bit. Duke is doing EV detection using exactly this kind of capability. So that's step one in my four-step process, which really is establishing that visibility. Back to my example. Here's the dashboard as you step into the control room at your utility. What you see on the screen is the substation down to the feeders and out to the distribution transformers. You knew the lights were still on, so you didn't have an outage, but if you're looking at what's really happening inside of the grid, you've got several transformers that are flagging they're at a critical level. They've got some real load based on them. And because you're keenly interested in what's going on in your cul-de-sac, you click on one of those transformers and you see here's actually the distribution transformer that's serving you and your neighbors. Your system happens to be equipped with some pretty neat technology. You have the ability to download applications into each one of these endpoints to understand what's going on. In this example, we have 4 apps that are downloaded into the endpoints themselves. The first one is location awareness, that allows each one of the endpoints to understand where they are electrically, which distribution transformer they're hooked up to. You can add those things together, and now you know exactly what the load is on the transformer. You can also be looking to see if there are EVs or PVs that are available in these assets. You've now established real visibility as to what's going on. This is one of the transformers that happens to be triggering an alert, so let's click on it one more time and take a look. And you can see that this transformer is loaded at about 140% in my example. It's above the nameplate capacity of the transformer, but probably not to the level that you're going to be blowing a fuse. So we still have service. But really what you can start to see with the table that's on the side of the slide here is those 4 steps that I talked about. The first column is visibility. What's going on behind this transformer? We've got a number of smart thermostats, so that's the number 8. We've got a number of EVs, that's 4. We've got rooftop solar, we've got load control switches to control things like pool pumps, and finally we've got some local storage with batteries. Those are the number of distributed energy resources that you were able to detect using this system. The next column in black really is what are the capabilities? How many of those could you do something with if you had to make a decision and trigger an event? And the last column in the sort of the yellow-orange color is the notion of how many am I using right now to balance out the grid. So far we haven't triggered an event, but we're at 140, so we're starting to get a little bit nervous in terms of the loading on that transformer. And this is just one distribution transformer across your entire network, but you can drill down and see all of this detail. So what happens next in our example? Let's suppose sun comes over, is covered up by a cloud and you lose some of that PV capability. Maybe it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it's a little hotter and more people are using their air conditioners, and okay, you've got that annoying neighbor across the street who just came home with their shiny new EV who wants to plug it in and use it, and now what happens? you end up with a situation where the load on that transformer, that local hotspot, has now increased. You're at 197% of the rated capacity. You are going to have a real problem before too long. What do we do about that? The last thing you want is to be the subject of an interrogation at the weekend barbecue, or even worse, having your teenagers remind you that you were the one that took out the Wi-Fi and left them without connection to the outside world. So let's think about what we really can do from using the actionable intelligence. So you can see those yellow-orange numbers are now starting to fill in terms of the capability. So by triggering an event, you can have a demand response and start to use some of those smart thermostats to drop the temperature from 72 maybe up to 74 and take off the air conditioning load. You can throttle the control on that EV charging. So maybe you only charge at 50% in this example. And then finally, you can start to manage those load control switches to reduce the load from a couple of pool pumps and pull battery charge and put it back into the grid. Suddenly you've taken that very critical situation from 197% down to right around 100%, and you'll be the popular guy at the weekend barbecue when nobody will be talking about what happened with an outage overall. So you've used the common infrastructure that you had put in place for more mundane tasks like meter to cache. You've used the notion of being able to download applications into the endpoints to be able to establish visibility and understand what's out there. Begin to work with your consumer base to understand the capability and what you can do, triggering the control action when you really needed it, and finally optimize the situation to improve the reliability. All of these things are possible, and I'm only scratching the surface from using the edge of the network. When we start to combine all of the data from SCADA, from the ADMS system down, all the way down to the edge, you have a much more comprehensive view on what's actually happening across the distribution network to start to deploy technology in a way that increases reliability, reduces cost, increases the lifespan of your assets, and provides a better quality of service. Some of the announcements that we made in advance of this show to do collaboration work with Schneider Electric with their ecosystem, EcoStruxure platform for ADMS integration, with GE Vernova with their Grid OS platform, is really meant to bring the idea of full visibility of the grid from the system level to the edge level and be able to optimize all things in between. What I'm talking about here is not science fiction. This is science reality. All of the capabilities that are in my little mock demo here that kept you in good standing within your community are things that are in use in the world today. There's about 9 million of these downloadable application distributed intelligence endpoints that are out in the field, and I would say probably most of them are in the networks of the people that are within the sound of my voice now. We can do a lot more for the grid. We can do a lot more for the planet. And of course, we can do a lot for our communities by using the capabilities that we have. All of this capability is built on the use of data. And really, the last point that I want to make in the time that I have with you today is bring about the notion that how we make use of all of the data that's available to us is the next generation, is the future. The algorithms that are in play in the example that I gave are based on machine learning, so relatively rudimentary, although been in use for a couple of decades and continuing to get better and better. But as we start to combine weather data, ADMS data, AMI data, edge data, with more predictive forecasting models, we can improve the quality of service, and again, we can optimize the system much more. The future is really all about the use of that data, and we're now on the cusp of starting to use generative AI for the kinds of problems that we're dealing with here. And it's pretty easy to think about generative AI as something else. It's somewhere else. It isn't really having something to do with me or with my job. Today, according to Capgemini, only about a third of utilities are doing something with Gen AI, and I think that's going to rapidly change. It's important that we embrace it in a responsible manner and think about how we can use it. The productivity gains that come from it are much the same as when you first started using something like email or perhaps a BlackBerry. It was no longer this diffuse notion of being able to work anywhere, anytime, and be able to zip off a quick message. That level of productivity benefit you got is really what something like a Copilot will do for you on the Gen AI front. And that's where we really need to be heading next. The announcement that we made with Microsoft to integrate into our outcome solution all of our data services, the ability to use that open AI to bring that large language model, that generative AI capability right to your desk. So no longer do you have to run down the hallway to find someone in engineering or someone in IT to be able to generate a report for you. Why not just ask the computer in natural language and have it do the hard work? That productivity benefit is something we can do in a safe and responsible manner. This doesn't have to be James Cameron's Terminator and Skynet. This can be something that absolutely can be useful as part of your daily job and really should be part of something that we're all thinking about for the future. So I'm out of time, but I am going to really end where I started. So welcome to DISTRIBUTECH 2024. Welcome to the new neighborhood. And this time I really do mean the community that is inside of this room. Let's learn, let's create together, because after all, we all live in the same neighborhood. Thank you.